Kia ora koutou, e te āhuatanga, te tūpapa o te rā, he mihi aroha ki a koutou. He mihi hohunu ki te whare etu nei, te poho Rawiri, ki te whare hau, tino rawa, tino te poho o hine tuhia. E tēnei te mihi nunui ki ngā hau kāinga nā te one e whakahangaia a te rā whare. Ngā mihi ki a koutou, me te whare hau, me te whare tīpuna e wāngi koutou. Thank you for the opportunity to take part in this conference. Unfortunately, I was able to come for the pōwhiri this morning. I had some things to tend to this morning, but awesome to see the last three people on stage and some of the whakaaro that they're spreading. And especially in the space of waste, where it's dealing with waste at the top of the cliff or back from the edge of the cliff and not at the bottom of it, because that's where the change needs to happen. It's with, as Kate was saying, it's with the power of the FPOS card rather than trying to deal with it at the end. So really good to hear that concept. Ko waiau, who am I? Ko Hikurangi te maunga, ko waiau pun te awa. Ko ue pōhatu e Ngāti Porou ngā iwi, ko Panapa Ehau ahau. I am from Ruatoria, under our ancestral mountain Hikurangi, which is also the name of a number of entities through which we do a bit of our work. So as Hikurangi Enterprises, I'm the director of that company, as there are a number of directors here as well. And I'm also a director of the Hikurangi Cannabis Company. While this session was focused on Hikurangi Enterprises, I'm going to delve into Hikurangi Cannabis Company. So a little bit of whakapapa, or a bit of a story to how we get to the cannabis company. So 3 years ago, Hikurangi Enterprises was set up to focus on sustainable economic development for the greater Ruatoria area. So how could we create jobs that were sustainable long term, that looked after the land and the people? We, as people from back home, we are guardians of that which is given to us, whether it's the land, the water, everything that's around us. We spent a little while looking at what opportunities were within our local area, and wanted to move away from a low value, high volume commodity based economy, which is what we have up the coast, which is pretty much hard hooved animals, pine trees and a little bit of grain, into full value chain where we can create lots of jobs by not only growing it but processing it, making it, taking it to market, all the way through. We looked at a number of things. We've got a number of projects that we're working through. Most of those are in a research and development phase, where we haven't tended to jump onto a bandwagon that's already existing within the New Zealand market, where we've been about how do we create new ways of doing things that have intellectual property with it, so that we're not only just growing the thing and turning it into something, but we're actually developing knowledge that we can then leverage and sell that out to make a profit down the track. So one of the things that actually came from a whānau here in Gisborne was the Te whānau from Manatuki. They asked us if we'd thought about growing hemp. This was 3 growing seasons ago now. We hadn't. We literally got some seeds off them, planted them in the ground, and now we are arguably the leading medicinal cannabis company in the country, which is not a bad. It's not a bad place to be in, considering we come from a township of about 600 to 800 people. So if anything comes from that, it doesn't matter how big you are, it's how much heart you have to do the things that you want to do. So that's the story of how we get to Hikurangi Cannabis Company. The title of this, the bit that I'm speaking on is Regenerative Agriculture. while we're not, we're more in the horticulture space because obviously cannabis is plants, but we'll go through our take on the regenerative space is that people and land are the same thing. The Māori name for land is whenua, and the Māori name for the placenta and birth is whenua as well. So we are part of the land, it's part of us. There's no difference to that. And so a lot of those values underpin not only Hikurangi Enterprises, but the Hikurangi Cannabis Company. And this is the venture within our suite of projects that is going into commercial realisation. So we're able to look at things that, what actions are we undertaking within a commercial process that we can change from business as usual to have positive effects on the environment and our surrounding resources. So that's the basis of what we suite. So a little bit probably different from what most people would have seen as regenerative agriculture, but this is our take on it for our experience and what we do. It's supposed to be a 25-minute presentation. Because of our few of our other speakers take a little bit longer, and people take a little bit longer to come from beautiful kairos out there. I'm going to pull a little bit shorter, but please do feel free to answer questions along the way if you want. So, this is like our mission, goal, overview of what the company's about. So our positioning in global sense is Indigenous innovation for global good. Medicinal cannabis isn't a native plant to this area. There's no landrace strains. They come from the Asia area of the world. But we're looking at different ways of doing things in a business concept that allow for global good. So an example of that is in most business as usual models, it's how do you get most value out of products to go to the one or two owners or owners. Ours is the other way around. Is we still need to do that for commercial prospects, but how do we distribute the wealth throughout the venture itself? So how do we enable in the cannabis industry overseas? In New Zealand, it's very new, legally anyway. It's about big companies making money, taking profits up. For us, we still need to do that to be viable, but how do we distribute as much as we can out to grow our partners and communities? Our mission, healing for the people, the medicinal cannabis company, it's about creating rongoa or medicines to be more accessible to people so that people can increase their well-being. Healing for the land, how do we undertake steps that isn't just greenwashing things, but how do we actually do meaningful things, undertake meaningful processes that look after the land as we do it. Healing for all. So these are some of the values upon which we base the way that we do stuff, the lens upon which we see the world and do business. It's a bit small, but I'll just talk to them. So the first one is konotana, and so that's integrity. So saying what we do and doing what we say, and staying really true to that. Maui tama. So for those of you who know the stories of Maui, how he slowed down the sun and he pulled up to Ika Maui, the North Island. Maui's waka sits on top of Maunga Hikurangi, or Mount Hikurangi. We're all descendants within Ngāti Porou we're descendants of Maui, and he was known as a trickster, Maui the trickster. In other words, in some ways you could say he was an entrepreneur or a change maker. So he slowed down the sun because it was going across the sky too quickly. So that act was how could he increase the well-being of his people by having more time to do the things they need to do in their life. So that's the inspiration that we take. And we celebrate that way of doing business as unusual. It's one of our catch cries. It's how can we do something that's different? Because if we keep doing if you always do the thing you've always done, you always get the same result. And we're looking for different results that are different to what the mainstream has done to allow us to have our environment and our society in, I guess, the not so healthy place that it is. Orama is around improving well-being. whether it's the well-being of whānau, the well-being of the whenua, prioritising the well-being of our staff, our communities. It's that whole, there's win-win-win situations everywhere, and how do we decrease? It's not win-win-win and somebody else loses. It's how do we have well-being across every touch point for us. And whakawhanaungatanga. And so that's the real focus on connecting and collaborating with people. So everyone has a taonga, everyone has a blessing or something that they carry, and so how do we create the opportunity to be really inclusive with people. Okay, so if we get down to cannabis production, this isn't legal in the country at the moment to produce or grow cannabis for production of products. At the moment, there's licenses for doing research and breeding. The legislation has passed. This is for medicinal cannabis, and the regulations will be put in place by December 19th. By this time next year, people in New Zealand will be able to legally grow and produce medicinal cannabis products that can be sold into market. On the right-hand side here, we have globally what the typical medicinal cannabis growing facilities look like in the globe. Fully controlled indoor lights, literally a box which you can't get into for security reasons, and very high energy costs, very high input costs across the board, and very high infrastructure costs. So a lot of money and effort has to go into be able to set that up. In the middle we have glass houses, which obviously use the sun, so it's not so intensive. And then on the far left we have outdoor growing. So the outdoor growing space uses 95% less resources than indoor. Across the globe there are, I can't say 100%, but pretty close to 99% sure there are none, if any, outdoor growing medicinal cannabis production facilities in existence, and that's a lot to do with regulations of places around the world. New Zealand is it's taken a while to get on the bandwagon for cannabis and medicinal cannabis and recreational cannabis, which will be coming in time. But our government's been really, really progressive. Usually what happens is you have medicinal cannabis and it takes about 10 years to get to recreational cannabis. New Zealand's set to do it within 2 years. The government we have at the moment is quite progressive, and they have given an indication that they would like to support the development of outdoor growing to help those who have been most disproportionately affected by cannabis prohibition over the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years. What that means is that the cannabis industry in New Zealand can leapfrog a whole of jurisdictions around the world and provide a lot more people with the opportunity to potentially participate in the industry while having less effect on the natural resources around us. So not needing so much power, not needing to put in so many, burning through thousands of light bulbs that can just have to go to waste, not having to have thousands of plastic pots or plastic grow containers that need to go to waste. So we're very concentrated on supporting the development of industry that supports that end of the scale rather than this. And we're influencing that space in the regulatory and legislative space as much as we can. So, regardless of which one of those that we choose, will become status quo, or the options, there's still a need for energy. Up the coast, energy is very limited. If you think about from where the production of energy takes place, and you have a big pipe, and then you get to a substation, and it gets to a smaller pipe, into a smaller pipe, into a smaller pipe. Up the coast, we're at the end of the line. So by the time you get up there, you go from a culvert, from where it's thing to like a garden hose that doesn't have much pressure at all. So one of the things that we're having to look at is what kind of resources do we have? And a lot of you will be familiar with that photo on the left from last year in Tolaga Bay when we had all the slash debris. That's a massive resource that we have up the coast. We have a lot of forestry, and there's going to be years or decades of resource, abundant resource available for turning into a, that can be used as a resource for, in our case, turning it into the likes of electricity and heating. So if we go back a slide, and this might be an example of a nursery that you need heating and lighting to be able to run that. So instead of plugging into the mains, and for our ones that live a bit further north than us, and we turn everything on and all the lights go dim because the pipe's pretty small, is how can we look at using things like forestry waste to create clean burning energy to create electricity and heat. Now, a bit earlier on we talked about collaboration. Most of the wheels that we need have already been created. So there's the likes of Ron Headley, who's got a sawmill in Ruatoria, and he has 3 sons that have been through engineering down in Canterbury, and so they're working on a model for creating localised energy, and ECT has been part of some funding that's investigating how we have alternative energy options for up the coast, not just in Ruatoria but up and down. So that's another thing that we're doing so that we can localise and I guess have that circular economy going on. So those 2 things, the growing ways of growing and the energy are 2 things of land. And this, what I'm about to talk about now, is the opportunity for how you do the regenerative. You put the regenerative thinking across people. So we're about healing the land, healing the people. Up the coast, especially up the top of the coast, we are predominant in all the negative statistics. And so Hikurangi Enterprises was born to create sustainable economic activity through jobs and local jobs. For the cannabis company, we're looking at setting up grower partner models that allow people to work together and collaborate to be able to grow for the cannabis company. So just like when Sir Nata had the butter factory, or set up the butter factory in Ruatoria, there was an opportunity for families where they had 2 cows or 200 cows to be able to all take part within their capacity to then feed into a centralised model so that everybody could benefit. And so that's the model that we're looking at as well. So rather than us just getting hold of investment and building heaps of glass houses or doing heaps of outdoor stuff, is growing heaps outdoors, how do we spread that opportunity to more and more people? It allows us to focus on that centre point, or making it more successful on taking stuff to market and product development, all that enabling stuff so that more and more people, whether it's from Gisborne all the way out to Pōtaka, are able to partake in the industry. So if that wealth is distributed across the region, then we have an increase in well-being because more households have more income going into those households. It's not rocket science that if you increase the income into your household, then the well-being of that farmer increases, whether it's being able to pay for the electricity for the whole month, or being able to buy whatever is needed, whether it's medicine or whatever. So, this is something that isn't being done by anybody else within the industry, but it's something again that we're concentrating on lots, so with a lot of attention on, so that we can distribute benefits from an industry which across the globe is pretty much run by a duopoly. So we're looking at how as business unusual we can upset that, tip that balance back that way. We like challenges. And so these are some examples of things that we're engaging with that we talk about Punotanga as we're walking the talk. So we're a member of the Sustainable Business Network, which a number of you may be aware of. A whole lot of people who are thinking about sustainability, if you want to be, surround yourself with those who you want to be most like. And so that's an example of that. Parakore, myself and my partner have a relationship with Parakore crew, and so that's something that we're looking to implement. Parakore is started out specifically focused on marae, but its vision was to go out into Māori businesses and organisations. So as a company, that's something that we're really looking forward to showcasing as a commercial entity. Down in the bottom left there is FairCan, Global Fair Trade Cannabis Initiative. So a number of you will know of fair trade, where products are sourced from companies that look after their employees. We've been instrumental of putting together an international alliance of people, and we've been one of the co-founders of FairCan, so that people who are engaged in the industry are influenced by doing good. On the bottom right here we have bioagro, so that's an organic certification and verification process. So again, how can we make sure we're looking after the land, and being organic is just a no-brainer. So yeah, that's part of what our growing cooperative model will entail there. And then up the top right there is New Zealand Medicinal Cannabis Council, and again we've been instrumental in leading the development of that, and that's in a regulatory legislative space to make sure that the industry is influenced in a positive way, not in just a single business as usual, how do you make the most money to line your pockets and buy new cars for your garage kind of way. So these are examples of some of the things that we're doing to walk the talk and make sure that it's ingrained within our business model. It underpins how policies are made for a company to run, etc. Yeah, so that's our journey to date. It's the beginning of in New Zealand, it's the beginning of an industry that has huge opportunities for our country, but also for our country to be world or global leaders within an international marketplace. So, yeah, kia ora koutou.